Don't compress everything. This is quite a silly one because it seems really obvious, but you'd be surprised. I get a lot of mixes where compression is just applied for the sake of applying compression. There's certain things that are so obvious they don't need compression. Huge, massive, heavy guitars, which are just a brick of just distortion and massiveness. Putting compression on them most often makes them sound smaller. So the last thing you need to do when you've got this massively heavily distorted guitar sound is compress it. You might want to dip some EQ, you might want to boost some EQ, who knows? But the last thing you need to do is compress it first. Let it breathe, let that sound be great. Secondly, virtual instruments. Some of them are recorded so evenly and so well, they're not like organic instruments. We talked about this last week. Organic instruments, like kick drums. Velocity on samples can be literally that, just loud and quiet. So it's the same kick drum sample, for instance, turned down. That is not the same as playing it softly. When you play a kick drum softly, you might get some of the low end out of it as the resonance of the kick drum happens. But when you hit it harder, the low end might still be there to a certain extent, but the attack increases. So that's why on an organic instrument, you might want to compress it more because you might want to bring up the attack and the low end and make them meet a little bit together so it's more even. Now, on a lot of program stuff that I get, that is not an issue. It's literally like program stuff is quite often just a kick drum that's laid in that may be up and down in volume. The velocity changing isn't actually as big a deal as the relationship between the attack and the drive, the boom of the kick. So that's why I would use a compressor more readily on a live kick, and on a programmed kick, I don't use it as often. Or if I do use it, I use significantly less on the programmed kick than I would on the live kick. Next thing, synths. Big, fat, virtual synths, just like a block of square wave of sawtooth synthesizer. Last thing you need to do is put compression on it. The compression thing is probably just another way to make it sound smaller. In those instances, if things want to be louder or quieter, just use volume automation. And the reality is like I'm compressing very organic, very dynamic signals that I'm trying to control. I'm not compressing undynamic signals. So just literally opening up a compressor and putting it on everything is a waste of your time and energy. Be very selective about what you compress. Vocals, love compression, especially if they weren't recorded with any and somebody is incredibly dynamic. But even then, you might want to use minor amounts of serial compression and then automate volume control, all of the peaks and troughs inside of the vocal. Automation can do a lot more than compression when used wisely. Don't use the compressor as a lazy way of controlling the dynamics and ruining how the song might breathe. Get in there and use it strategically and use it to enhance, not to destroy.